All right, episode 17, Behind the Gate, Greensboro-based podcast. I'm going to go ahead and say if you're in the car, the kids are listening, maybe hit the pause. Definitely come back. I think we're going to have some incredible stories here. We got Billy Ingram with us, Greensboro native. Had such a fun time digging into the history that you provided before we sat down here. So we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And Billy, in your words, and take as much time as you need, be as descriptive as you want to be. Goldie Hawn's tits. How were they? You've seen them. I don't know if they're on the internet, but let's start there. Let's get into it.
Well, I was working on a movie poster called Overboard for the movie Overboard with Kurt Russell, I guess it was. Mm-hmm. And so for the poster, she's falling off the ship, right, in this nice dress, it's a strapless dress. So we shot her on a trampoline, going up and down, so she looks like she's falling, right? Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, one of her tits would pop out of the dress, and they were photographed. Yeah. But so that's how I got to see Goldie Hawn's tits,
and
they were spectacular.
Spectacular. When did that movie come out? I think
it's like 87, something like that. Wow. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of a blur. I was a movie poster artist from 1985 to 1994, and the funny thing about that is, I just happened to walk into that business. I didn't have any training as an artist. But up until the mid 80s, you couldn't reproduce a photograph in color the size of a movie poster. And then all of a sudden you could. So all movie posters were illustrations, or they were high-con shots that were hand-colored. So out went the illustrators, and in came guys like me to do photo manipulation, first with prints and then with color Xeroxes. And we would have to do mock-ups of posters that looked like a finished printed poster. Our hands we had to do anything you could do in Photoshop today. We had to figure out a way to do. And so that was a huge challenge, but it was also really exhilarating. And we would have, it would be 6 o'clock at night. We'd have no idea when we were going home. Not a clue. Not a clue. We might be there till 2, 3, 4 in the morning.
Goodness.
You just didn't know.
What are, on that note, what are some of the movies people would recognize that you've worked on the poster for?
I was working for Tony Seiniger, and I'll tell you Tony's backstory and how. So he did all the blockbuster movies, all the big movies in Hollywood. And other shops would also be pitching in their ideas, but Seiniger usually got the finish. Tony was trying to break into the business in the 1970s and going around the studios and say, "Will you give me a chance to do a movie poster?" And he goes to Universal, and it was Universal, and they said, "Well, look, we've got this movie. It's a piece of shit, and we're going to just release it to as many theaters as we can because we know that when word gets around about how bad this movie is, we're going to lose a lot of money on this thing. It's way over budget. We'll let you do the poster. We don't want to spend a lot of money on the poster because obviously, we're already losing money on this piece of shit movie." And I'll just cut to the chase. The movie was Jaws, which completely changed the entire industry because now movie studios knew that they could release a movie big in a lot of theaters, mm-hmm. and continue to make money. So he became sort of like the guy to go to when you wanted to release a big budget movie and wanted to make the big bucks.
What are we going to do with the movie poster of Jaws? Well, it's about a shark. Have him come out of the water. That'll work perfect.
The girl swimming at the top, which I think was the paperback cover. They just modified it.
Yeah.
And made the shark look a lot meaner.
So Jaws is huge. That was what Spielberg was he?
Yeah,
Jaws?
Yeah.
What other big productions?
Oh, we did all the Bond movies, Star Trek movies. Let's see, Lethal Weapon movies, the Beverly Hills Cop movies, the Rocky movies.
Oh shit! And
then Moonstruck. I actually did the illustration that's on the poster for Hunt for Red October.
Okay.
I mean, you name it. It was crazy. We also did a lot of bombs too, like Hudson Hawk. I remember that one. I mean, Death Becomes Her, Pretty Woman, Glory, Juice. I mean, so many.
The list goes on.
Yeah.
That's
dozens
awesome,
and
man.
Hundreds.
That's so cool. I was, you said Rocky. I was a big Rocky fan. And Beverly Hills Cop. I recently rewatched those. funny. Great stuff.
The last one stunk.
Did it?
Oh my God.
Like you talking about the one that they just released? Yeah.
God, it was terrible. Awful.
I watched the last Bad Boys 2 with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, and I just feel like, and Eddie Murphy the same. Great actors, all good stuff. It's just like, we got to come up with some new material.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. One of my favorite bands, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you got a chance to hang out with them.
Yeah, so I got involved in the punk rock underground music scene in LA in 1980. And so, we were just hanging out in small clubs. The Chili Peppers were coming up. I went to probably their second gig. Social D, Perry Farrell. I mean, all those great LA bands. We got to see them in rooms, with 25, 30, 40 people. Just little dive bars. And the crazy thing about LA at that time was nobody wanted to be there. It was really run down. It was cheap to live. It was really cheap to live in Los Angeles in the early 80s. And you couldn't give away warehouse space downtown. They would try to sell it for 50 cents a square foot. Nobody wanted it. Now
selling it for 50 cents a square foot.
Now you could probably get 500 or 5,000. Who knows?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. So club organizers would find a warehouse, break in, bring a generator and DJ equipment and some lights, and just throw a club. There'd be no lights on outside, no street lights or anything. just pitch black.
That's incredible. Was Flea as crazy then as he is now?
Yeah. Oh, listen. If you asked me at that time, okay, what band is going to make it out of this scene? And there were bands I just knew were going to, Social Distortion, the Minutemen. I knew they were going to do it. I said, the Chili Peppers, no fucking way. No fucking way. They were too fucked up.
Just
fucked
drugs
up all the
and
time.
everything.
Yeah, half the time, half the band wouldn't show up for the gig. I remember being in I was managing the first openly gay punk band, probably the first openly gay band in America. And Chili Peppers were opening for my band, Red Wedding. It's not my band, I was managing. And just Flea and Anthony showed up. They didn't show up with their instruments or anything.
They just showed up.
Yeah, so they asked Spider Taylor if they could use his guitar and the drummer. And they just got up and did a show, got paid. And I like to say that Flea and Anthony owe me $5 because on that gig, they came up to me and asked me if I'd buy them White Russians. I said, sure. And so they still owe me $5. I know they still owe me $5. I had a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, you want me to ask them for the $5?" I go, "Hell no! It's a great story. Flea and Anthony owe me $5. That's better than having $5."
Well, I don't know that they'll ever see this, but guys,
pay with interest.
Pay the man with interest.
You know what a White Russian costs now?
A lot.
Yeah.
We went. Me and my buddy were. This is crazy. Before my wife was my wife, she was my bartender. Oh. And she'll love this story. She likes when I plug her into these things too. So a buddy of mine, we go into the bar that we go to, and we just got on this White Russian kick that night. And they didn't have any milk. So we're like, well, if we go to the store and buy a gallon of milk. She's like, sure, whatever. Like the gallon of milk later, I'm hurling in the trash can beside the bar. He's out back.
Yeah.
But, we're married with a kid now, and I made it through that. But love a White Russian. My nickname is also Dude, spelled Doode. So when the Big Lebowski came out with the Dude and the White Russian, I felt like I needed to take that drink on. So going back to your movie posters, obviously some iconic names there. What project would you say you were the most proud of?
Well, it's I don't know that I could really take any pride in it because, see, what I was doing was working with art directors, and a lot of time I would have some design input or I wouldn't have any design input. It was just, I was just really proud that the first year that when I started doing the artwork and not just mechanicals, which is what I was hired to do, just like, what goes to the printer for the final poster or the Academy Award or the presentation or the trailers, the graphics for the trailers. I was just I would go to work the first year just terrified that I'd be asked to do something and I wouldn't be able to do it. And that never happened. And I didn't have any formal training in art. I had art class in high school, but I had Miss Bell, and Miss Bell taught us how to do all kinds of different, collage and how to do penciling and inking and working with a mechanical pen. and so many different disciplines that when I was thrown into this thing, it kind of came natural to me to figure out how I can, airbrush a sky or, make this blend, or I can run this through the color Xerox machine, the yellow pass and the blue pass, and then unplug the machine and then pull the paper out. And now I've got, something I can use for a background or something, You just look for different techniques and you just had to come up with stuff,
Nice. Sounds like you had pretty creative side there.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Miss Bell. Didn't know her. Page High School, Greensboro.
Yep.
Yep.
She prepared me.
Go Whirlies. Anyway.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Academy Awards. Most challenging experience you had, I think you worked on a few campaigns when it came to the Academy Awards.
Yeah. For stars like Jack Lemmon and Tom Cruise and Gene Hackman, who just died. We would do for your consideration, best actor Jack Lemmon in this motion picture and that type of thing, or best special effects or that type of thing. So, it was pretty rigid, but I actually enjoyed doing those.
So the stuff that you would see on screen, you guys were working on?
No, this would be in the trade papers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to try to get people to vote for them. Put it out there in front of them. Hey, remember I was in this movie. And,
I got you. Okay.
I think it was, one of the movie posters, and I worked with Olga Kolyak, and she was the art director on this, was from Moonstruck. I really enjoyed working on that because I was a big Cher fan. Mm-hmm. But, that if you look at the poster of her kicking up her heels, they shot that in Central Park. That's actually 3 different photographs of Cher put together. Her head is one, the torso is another, and her feet and the dress she's wearing is another photograph.
I've got to say, when Believe, what was that? Believe, yeah. That was my jam.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. It was a good track. Good track. Completely switching gears. You unknowingly dated 2 porn stars.
I did.
Care to share their names?
I can't remember their names.
They weren't that memorable.
I was actually trying to remember their names, and I probably should have, looked up porn stars of the 1980s now deceased.
Yeah.
I was threatened with a lawsuit by a former porn star.
Okay.
His name was Johnny Harden.
Okay.
And I wrote about him in my book Punk, because I wrote about the time when I was hanging out, with the bands and going to the clubs, the underground clubs and whatnot. But I was working for a gay magazine that would be distributed out in the gay bars, and he was one of the clients. I was doing the advertising, and I would write the column for the magazine. But I was doing. They had an advertising firm, so I was the advertising arm, and he was one of the clients. And he comes in. He was a really good looking guy. He was a Ford model also. Which is about the top, New York model that you can be. He comes in one day with a check for $1,000 signed by Paul Lynde, if you remember him from the Hollywood Squares, the Center Square and the Hollywood Squares. And I naively asked, why did you get a check for $1,000 from Paul Lynde? He slept with him, the night before, and that was his pay. He was always trying to get me to do he claimed to have, what was it, 12 inches he claimed to have? But and it was big, He always loved to bring in the photographs of his latest photo shoot. He was so proud of himself. He was always trying to get me to be in a porn movie with him, and I was like, "There's just no way that square peg is going to fit into this round hole. There's just no way."
Well, if you hadn't turned it off for the kids, it's good. No, you're good. No, I love hearing the raw stories of this. This is great.
I actually have the greatest gay porn credit you could possibly have, because I didn't have to appear on film, which I never did. But we had the time. I always seem to be at the right place at the right time. At that time, porno movies were coming out on VHS. Before that, they were on 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter film. You had to go down in your basement with a projector and show it on a sheet, So they had just come out with a video cassette, and they were sold for a fortune. I mean, like $200 a piece or something. So they had these elaborate boxes. And one of the porn producers comes in and he goes, "Billy, I've got a studio booked tonight," and I think it was Cherokee Studios, where a lot of great records were recorded. I need somebody to do a voiceover, because they didn't shoot with sound. They didn't have the capability to shoot with sound at that time. So all sound in porn movies in the past were all overdubbed, and it's so cheesy. That's what makes it so cheesy. He says, "What we'll do, we'll run the film, and then you just talk through." Well, it just so happened to be a movie called Coming of Age. I'll let you guess how they spelled coming.
Yeah,
Coming of Age. The star was Kip Knoll, and he was the first gay porn star that wasn't sort of the lumberjack type. Up until that point, it was the hairy chest and the dark hair and the beards and the jeans and the chaps and that was the look, the gay look for the porn movies. He was the first blonde surfer type gay porn star, and so I voiced the first twink, what they would call a twink today.
that's
got
crazy.
$100, and then took a date up to see a group called Missing Persons, who was just playing their first gig, I think, first or second gig. They blew up and became a big band in the mid '80s. Dale Bozio, largely credited for Lady Gaga, kind of stealing her look.
Oh, okay.
And her stage presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Lady Gaga.
I don't think a lot of people remember Missing Persons, but they were a great band. They were all Zappa alumni.
Okay.
So
Nice. Switching gears a little bit, Barbra Streisand.
Yeah.
You got to work with her a little bit.
Well, yeah, on Prince of Tides. So what would happen for a couple of weeks? I think she'd finished shooting and she was editing. She would send over a package at 6:00 on the dot, and it would be like 5. She wanted to see 5 different mock-ups, and she'd have, I want this background and this foreground, and I want this logo, and I want this logo in this color, and so I would mock those up for her. And she'd send them back with notes, and I wish I kept those notes. But there was an incident. She wanted the logo in 155, Pantone 155, which is like a creamy, buttery white. And she was over at, I think it was Warner Brothers, looking at the designs, and she says to the rep, "I wanted this logo in 155." He goes, "That is 155." She goes, "No, it's not." He goes, "Yes, it is." He goes and gets the color chip and puts it right on there, and thank goodness it matched, because I made sure, it's Barbra Streisand, make sure everything's perfect. Better be perfect. She goes, "Well, that's still not what I want." And she went back to the office and called the studio and had him fired because he was right. So they called over to Seiniger and said, "Look, if you'll hire this guy on, we'll guarantee you this X amount of work." But the company we were working, Seiniger was so tight. There was so little space. You had to be the very, very best, or you wouldn't last, because there just wasn't space for people to just be slacking off. But the great thing about working there is, you'd be in the hallway and there's Annie Leibovitz. I did all the great photographers, all the great illustrators. Drew Struzan, one of probably the most famous movie poster illustrator. Indiana Jones, Star Trek, Star Wars. And so that was a great thing. I didn't know that Bruce Weber was a big photographer. He would always shoot the Olympians for Vanity Fair and all that. He was sort of a gay icon. I didn't know. I thought he was just a nice guy. He'd come by my desk and talk. He invited me to one of his parties, and I blew it off, which was probably the biggest mistake of my life, because they probably had the most beautiful men and women in the world at his party.
And you just decided you were going to hang out on the couch that night?
I just thought he was another guy. I didn't know,
Yeah.
If I'd known he was Bruce Weber.
Yeah.
I remember walking down the street in London, and one of the bookstores had a big display as Bruce Weber. And I'm like, "Bruce Weber? What?" There's all these books, all of his books, his picture books.
I could have gone to his party.
Oh, God, no. I could have been friends with Bruce Weber.
Oh, man. It's just, I keep going down this list, and it's just such big names. You once in life had pissed off Burt Bacharach. How did that go down?
Well, this is an embarrassing story. I don't know. This is
we can slide past it if you want to.
We moved to much bigger digs in the middle of Beverly Hills on Wilshire, right there where Canyon, and it's right dead center, Beverly Hills, in a high rise. And the bathrooms there, it was like the long line of stalls, and I was kind of embarrassed if I needed to do a number 2,
Mm-hmm.
So I would go downstairs and use Burt Bacharach's bathroom, which was across the hall from his office. And they called up and complained.
This dude's down
I don't
here
know why I
dropping
would
bombs.
bring that up, but never met the guy.
That's okay. We, sometimes you just like to do your business and
Yeah,
a little
like
bit of
private. It was a nice little bathroom.
Well,
It was a single.
We somehow keep going back to my wife and the bar she worked at where I met her. It was a 2-story bar, and one of a friend of mine was the owner of the bar. And so, we had poker nights in the basement, and there was a stage down there. They used to do music down there, and that was kind of, but he just used it as he was a drummer. He just used it as his music stuff. So he had his equipment down there. Nobody ever went down there. But if we were hanging out at the bar, we had the private bathroom downstairs.
Yeah.
We go number 2, and it's like, where'd Andrew go? He was downstairs. Oh, he's taking a shit. Oh, we'll see him in a little bit. So I can appreciate that. First posters for Motley Crue.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever think they'd be as big as they became?
Well, so again, going back to that advertising agency, the gay advertising agency, it was right down the street from Starwood, the infamous Starwood, that was owned by Eddie Nash, the Nash, who you may know from the movie Wonderland. The Wonderland, the bloodiest murder in Los Angeles history. I'll tell you a little story about Eddie Nash, too. But so it was right down the street from the Starwood. So a lot of the guys who were gigging at the Starwood would come up to Data Boy and have the posters made. And Nikki Sixx and the Vince, I guess the blonde kid, they were impossibly skinny. They were so skinny. And they'd wear those tight jeans and, big heels and be walking down Santa Monica Boulevard, and cars would be plowing into each other because they were like staring at them walking down the street with their long hair and everything. So Nikki and Vince would come in to have the posters for their band, which was called London. And then they decided that they wanted to change the name of London to Motley Crue. And so I did their first posters for when they changed their name to Motley Crue.
Well,
yeah, they were so young and skinny.
I was going to say, how old was Nikki at that time?
I don't know. I'm 19, 20, something like that. I mean, we were all kids.
Yeah.
I was like 21.
Did you watch the Dirt that came out on Netflix?
Yeah, and it's funny when they announced that, I said, I wonder who's going to play me, and somebody did. Not by name, but they actually, if my memory serves, they have a scene where they go in and have posters made for their new band Motley Crue.
Well, I remember when they were like drawing the logo and everything in the movie. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch.
I'm gonna have to
now.
too, because I may be falsely remembering it. I just seem to remember that.
Well, I know they made it part of the movie, like coming up with the name and bringing Vince in and all that, and Nikki, and then when Tommy came in as the drummer and all that good stuff, which I thought MGK did a great job with Tommy Lee. But funny movie. Sticking on the movie or on the music scene, you were asked to be the second lead singer of Kansas.
Yeah. Well, back to Missing Persons, their producer was Ken Scott, and Ken produced all those great David Bowie albums in the 70s, Hunky Dory, and all that great stuff. He also engineered Daniel, that Elton John hit. He worked with Judy Garland. He'd worked with, just you name them. He worked with the Beatles on the Let It Be, I believe it was.
Oh my gosh!
And George Harrison. But anyway, he was set to. He had produced this album for Missing Persons, and it had gone to like number 12 on the chart, something like that. And they asked if he would produce the next album for Kansas, but the lead singer had left. And so they asked me if I'd be interested in being the lead singer of Kansas. Not having heard me sing a note or anything, maybe I just fit the costumes, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, it would have happened or not. I just said, no, I can't see it. I don't. I don't know why I didn't just, okay, sure, let's give it a shot.
Did you have a voice you think that could carry that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. Fair enough. Who knows,
It's conceivable, but.
What was Kansas's big song? I'm trying
Dust in the wind.
Okay. Yeah.
All we are is dust. I guess we know now. No.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. Could have done it right there. That's
Dust in the
wind. You once accidentally drove something about Happy Days.
This is in Universal City, and I was driving down Lancashire, and I was like, I want to get stoned. I got to join. I want to get stoned. So I pull off the side of the road. And I just happened to pull off into this cul-de-sac. It wasn't really even a cul-de-sac. There were a couple of houses, and then there was like a park across the street. So I pull in there, and I noticed that they're shooting. It's a Happy Days house, and they were shooting just a car driving up the driveway. Mm-hmm. So I stopped. I got stoned. They had craft services was there, so I got the munchies. So I got out and had some donuts and got something to drink. Nobody said anything, and they were just shooting this car, over and over again, driving into the driveway and then driving out of the driveway.
And you just saw that as a good opportunity.
I'm just
going to get stoned and go eat donuts on the set of Happy Days.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything.
Nobody said anything.
You just hanging out for a little bit.
This was an exterior, so there were no cast members. There was just, it was just a B-roll unit.
I remember that show, old Ron Howard. I was nicknamed Opie when I was growing up.
I see the resemblance.
Well, it's like when I was born, I was very like blonde, blue eyes.
Yeah.
And then as I got in elementary school, I went just like straight red and freckles. And now my freckles have kind of died out and I've gone more dirty blonde. But yeah, dude, sports camps growing up, 5, 6, 7 years old, Opie. That was my nickname, Opie. Done a lot of stuff in Hollywood. Before we keep things rolling, I want to spend some time on TV Party. Tell us about that. What was that? If somebody hasn't heard it, before the YouTubes, before all this stuff, what was TV Party?
Well, here's the thing. So I decided in '94 that I wanted to be a writer, and I knew that I knew I was going to be broke. So you can't be broke in Los Angeles. So I figured I'd come back to Greensboro and I'd get a job in an ad agency. With my experience in marketing and advertising, it's kind of a waste that I'm not consulting with companies now. It's kind of a waste for them, really. But I figured it's going to be easy to get a job. And then, I'll come home at 6 o'clock and then I'll write, and then write on the weekends. But nobody would hire me. I could not get a job. And somebody showed me the internet. He showed me AOL. And then I said, was this part of a larger thing? And they said, yeah. I said, this is going to be the next big thing. This is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. And I thought, well, if you're so darn smart and creative, and you can work with people like Steven Spielberg and, Barbra Streisand, and, work with the top tier of talent in Hollywood, and you're up there working with these guys, and you're so smart and you're so talented, come up with something, If you're a psychic, go play the lottery.
Kind of like a challenge to yourself, right?
Yeah. So I started working on TV Party as a website. And in a couple of years, that was '94, I think by '96, you could actually stream audio over the internet. So I was, and this was done with Real Player. And the way Real Player worked was you had to have a $10,000 server, and you would stream your media through this server. But I found a workaround. It cost nothing. It cost absolutely zero. So I started, and then when in '97, I believe you could do video about the size of a postage stamp, but you could do this video. But I remember the first year of TV Party, I had pictures. They said at that time, a web page should not be, all elements included, no more than 10K. No more than 10K. And I had photos that were 100K. And I would have people writing to me complaining that I'm using up too much bandwidth on the internet with my stupid photographs and stuff. But I knew the internet would catch up. Yeah. I knew it would grow and expand, and pretty soon 100K would be nothing, And so it started out articles about, I called it TV Party after the Black Flag song. But classic TV. I was the first to do any kind of classic TV content, writing about classic TV shows. And people were really excited about it, especially local kids shows and that type of thing. And so people would send me videos, and I would digitize them and put them on the site. And for a while, it was all about the video. But I knew one day there would be a YouTube or something would come along where people could upload their own media. So I had to make it more about the writing. And it started getting attention all over the country. Entertainment Weekly reviewed TV Party and StarWars.com at the same time. Star Wars got an A. TV Party got an A+. So
wow.
And so I'm working freelance for this company at High Point, and they want to get into making websites for their clients, right? They wouldn't let me near their website. I'm the only person they knew that had ever done a website. I'm coming in every week with different magazines. Look, USA Today says that I'm the voice of a generation. Look, the Washington Post wrote up TV Party. Look, and they wouldn't let me near their web development team.
What was the reason behind that?
I find that that's pretty typical of Greensboro. You'd have to explain it to me. I'm baffled by the management style here in Greensboro. Thomas may appreciate this. I was doing the websites for KZL and Rock 92, and I'm out at one of their events at Wet and Wild Emerald Point, and the general manager, this is the year 2001, okay? The general manager comes up to me and he says, Billy, been talking to our marketing people in Raleigh, and the internet's not going to happen. It's just a fad. It's like a hula hoop. It's not going to take off. It's not going to be anything. I said, I can't wait to remind you of that in the future. Talk about, but I just found that to be so typical of Greensboro. I don't know what it is. Because in Hollywood, if you've got some heat behind you, people want to get up with you. They want to help you. They want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I found in Greensboro, if you've got some heat on you, they want to block you. They want to stop you. As opposed to wanting to collaborate and grow together. I could have made millions of dollars. If I'd had maybe $10,000, I'd had no money. So I did everything with no money.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the miracle of it. But if I'd had a few $1,000s, I could have made millions just buying up URLs, just buying up every 3-letter URL you could think of, which at that time you could.
Yeah.
And then sell them as CLR comes along and wants to have CLR.com, then you got it.
Yeah.
And I remember TV.com in 2002 or something like that sold for $1 million. Just the URL, TV.com.
Jeez. Yeah. Crystal ball, right?
Yeah. Well,
I had it. Or just a little bit of money.
I knew what was going to happen with the internet right away.
Yeah.
No, everybody thought I was nuts. My family thought I was on drugs or something. It was just like, why are you doing this? I was already used to working 16, 18-hour days. So I applied that since I didn't have a job. I would work during furniture market doing for that company in High Point, putting together catalogs, and that would finance me for the year. Just like that, the 10 weeks, 5 weeks here and the 5 weeks in the fall. And so I knew what was going to happen. It was obvious to me, but nobody else saw it.
I have a buddy who's made a career, I'll just say e-commerce, right? He's started in the automotive industry, and, I won't say names. He's working for a local company and just doing the old school car sales, right? And he tanked at it. And we were living together at the time, still a good friend of mine, just done really well in life. And he essentially moved over to internet sales. Now, this was probably, we were in our early 20s, so 2004, 5, 6, right? And he crushed it. And they were like, man, this kid's onto something. So they just let him start running that. Next thing you know, they moved him up. They moved him up to corporate. And then he just kept going up and up and up till he hit a ceiling where they were like, you deserve this next spot, but you're too young, right? And he kind of got caught in that same, kind of old school feel of, hey, we got to go with this. Well, I'm more qualified, right? Yeah. But it was an age thing for him at the time. And I say that to come back to this. My dad, old school textile business, right? Love my dad, smart guy. My grandfather was a credible business person. Dixie Bell Textiles was the name of the company.
Yeah.
Local company.
I know Dixie Bell. Yeah, I know that.
So granddad started working for them in the late 40s, and they bought it in the 80s. And we sold it when my dad died in 2020. I was sitting there. I was a golfer at the time. My buddy caddied for me, and I was playing relatively competitive tournaments, doing pretty well. And because of that internet brain of his, he's like, we got to start a golf website. And all we're going to do is we're going to contact golf courses, go play there, review them on the website. And over time, what we'll be able to do is create bookings, have deals, and we'll drive traffic to these golf courses, and we'll sell ad space and do all that stuff, the old school way of making money. Look at what Golf Week's done and Golf Now. I mean, huge websites that you can book courses all over the world. And I was explaining it to my dad in his office because he ended up creating it and just didn't put enough time and effort into it. Like the cover picture was me and him in a tournament I was playing, he was caddying. And I was like, Dad, how cool is this? Like, I'm on the internet. He's like, But to your point, if he and I would have had the time and resources and know what we know now to just be like, man, you've got a killer idea. Like, who knows what, and he's, again, done well in life, and the internet's been his platform. And it's, I don't know why that mentality is. I mean, just look, everything's like right here now. It's crazy.
It was one of those rare moments in time when I had the power. It was before, before CBS or ABC or anybody was on the internet. So it was a level playing field. The technology was such that there was a ceiling there, and I could bump right up against that ceiling, even get a little bit past it. That's not true anymore. Yeah. As an individual, you just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. You can get in there and swing, and hopefully, you get a good hit, like with a podcast or something, or with a website. I mean, it's almost impossible with a website, really.
Yeah.
Because you need massive amounts of promotion, But at that time, there just wasn't anything else. So I was attracting millions and millions of people a month. It was costing me at one point $1,200 a month to keep the website up. I was one of the first to come up with a way to make money with a website, with a subscription service. I was the first to do that. Mm-hmm. And I got to go and live in London. And when I was in London, it was coming up. I was going to lose the website. It was coming up. By this point, I think it was $1,200 a quarter. And it was coming up. I needed to come up with $1,200. There's no way I was going to do it. 'Cause you can't work there. It'd be like coming to the United States and working. It's illegal. You can't get a job over there. And the website was making a little bit of money, but not much. Enough to subsist on, enough to buy pot and eat, and pay rent. The rent was
the important things.
The important things, yeah. And the rent was actually cheaper there than it was here in Greensboro.
Whereabouts in London were you living?
In Brixton. And if you tell people Brixton, they'll go, "Oh my God, what?" It's so dangerous to do. But I would walk home in Brixton at 4 a.m. by myself, and unmolested. There are places in Greensboro you can't do that at noon. So anyway, while I was there, it was coming up, and I had to leave the country. You have to leave after 6 months. You can come back, for another 6 months, but that's it. So I'm getting ready to leave. I don't have the money. I'm going to have to borrow money from my mom and sleep on her floor. But every night before I went to bed, I envisioned getting a phone call from a publisher. I want to publish a book based on your website. And I would say, well, I want to do it my way. I want to turn it in camera ready. I only want a copy editor. I don't want an editor over me. I want to do it on my own terms. I'm going to lay it out myself because I can lay out myself. I can do all of it. Write it, lay it out, get a big advance, and then go out on a book tour and then land a TV show. And every night I would run this through my head. I would visualize this. One day I got a phone call from a publisher in Los Angeles. I want to do a book based on your website. Because at the time it was doing millions of people a month, so it was automatic. I said, okay, but I want X amount of money. He says, I'll just go. I said, I want a $30,000 advance. And he said, well, I'll give you a $30,000 for the second one. I'll give you $20,000 for the first one. Keep in mind, I'm broke. I said, I want half up front and the other half when I finish in 6 months, because I'll come back in the country and then finish it by 6 months. Then I'll have the money to go back to the United States. He goes, there's one catch, and this is a deal breaker, Billy. I go, okay, I want you to go out on a book tour. I said, okay, I'll do that. Sure, yeah, I'll do that. So sure enough, finished the book. It got rave reviews, was selling like crazy. Went out on a book tour. It was really wildly popular. When I was in New York, VH1 contacted me and asked if I would do a TV show. They were going to do a show called Super Secret TV Formulas about all the tropes of television, the evil twin and the trapped together episodes, and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I said, sure, and did that series for VH1. And then when that was over, Bravo contacted me, and I did a Christmas special for them. How much fun is it to go back to Los Angeles? And people was like, Billy, the first time I was like, Billy, what are you doing back in town? I'm on a book tour, And then the next time, Billy, what are you doing in town? Oh, I'm filming a TV special for Bravo, a Christmas special, right? And then I did a couple of series for them. That was hugely popular. and 100 great things about the holidays and 100 funniest movies and that type of thing. And then I just decided I didn't want to really do. I didn't really have any desire to do it to begin with, but because I had a book out at the time when VH1 contacted me, I said it'd be irresponsible of me not to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'd never done that before. You're sitting in a room, and the cameras are on you, and everybody's staring at you, and they're asking you questions. You got to come up with some pithy answers and whatnot. And I was well rehearsed because I don't do things haphazardly. And I don't remember what my point was, but
no, I love it. Keep going.
I didn't really want to do that. Yeah, and then VH1 contacted me, and they said we're doing the 100 or the greatest child stars of all time. And I said, well, who's number one, Spanky or Stymie from the Our Gang? It goes, oh, it's the kid from Different Strokes. What you talking about, Willis? That kid. I said, no, I don't want to be about. You got to be kidding me. You look at, it's esoteric, but the Little Rascals were on. They ran in the theaters from the 1920s into 1950, and then on television into the 1980s. So these little kids, they were stars for 40, 50 years, and they were absolutely brilliant compared to what's his name? I can't even remember his name. That kid from Different Strokes.
Yeah, before my time.
The little thing.
Yeah.
Well, good. I mean, and he ended up working as a security guard. I don't know if it was a really tragic story. That kid. Yeah. Everybody is screaming at their listening device right now. It's so stupid.
Well, and
Gary Coleman.
Okay, yeah, Gary Coleman. And to each their own. It's I remember the Little Rascals. I mean, they came out with another Little Rascals movie when I was younger, and then I remember we had the old school black and white Little Rascals and. Old Petey the dog. Wasn't it Petey the dog's name?
Yeah. Poor dog was poisoned. Seiniger actually proposed to Paramount that they do a Little Rascals. This is before the Little Rascals movie came out, with adult stars. So Eddie Murphy would play Stymie, and John Goodman would play Spanky. And they actually mocked it all up.
Just never came to fruition.
Just never went.
That would have been cool.
It would have been pretty funny, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty star-studded right there, just with those two.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure they would have filled the room. So back to Greensboro. Now, you mentioned doing a book tour. Correct me if I'm wrong. You had a book about Greensboro's history as well?
Yeah, I have two. The first one, when I came up with the idea, it's Hamburger Square. You've heard of Hamburger Square downtown, and maybe you haven't. A lot of people don't know that the middle where Natty Green's is called Hamburger Square. It's been known as Hamburger Square since the 1920s because there were 4 restaurants on that corner, and they all competed to serve who served the best hot dog, and somehow it became known as Hamburger Square. So,
well, do you remember some of the names of the restaurants?
Yeah. California Sandwich Shop is where Natty Green's is. Jim's Sandwich Shop or Jim's Lunch is where McCool's is, or actually where Little Brother.
I was going to say the brewing company.
Yeah. And I think the other one was New York Cafe. I'm not sure, but and it's so funny because that area became so run down in the 1950s. My mom went into California. No, that was a hotel also, where Natty Green's is. So the upper level was a hotel, and then the downstairs was a restaurant. But that hotel had become seedy, and also above Jim's Lunch and behind McCool's. That was a hotel as well. My mom was working at a daycare before she got married, and someone saw her walking into the sandwich shop, and they fired her because that area had such ill repute that
really
even seeing her walking into that sandwich shop was
crazy.
Was an affront to good Christian values.
Well, come a long way as a society.
We were talking about something else, weren't we? Did I get sidetracked with the Hamburger Square thing?
We were talking about we were talking about your Greensboro history book.
Oh yes, okay. So one of them is named Hamburger Squared. Is hamburger with the little 2, the mathematical square, which of course makes it almost impossible to find. And as soon as I came up with that, I go, that's going to make it really difficult to find this book. I go, fuck it, yeah, that's good.
Let's do it.
A few people that. And then I was writing under the name Billy I for my monthly column in O. Henry for whatever reason. And I was doing a collection of those articles, and I thought I was going to say by Billy I, and I thought, wait a minute, I'm putting out a book it's not even under my name. Well, it doesn't make any sense. Billy I doesn't exist. I need to put my name on it. It's called I on GSO. GSO being the short for Greensboro.
Certainly.
So those are two books that are all about Greensboro history, mostly about Greensboro history.
Okay.
Little extra stuff.
Any particular stories or that part of history that really sticks out in your brain that you enjoyed writing about?
Yeah, there were not every Christmas, but my mom died right before I started working for O. Henry magazine. She loved the magazine. And she knew everything about Greensboro. But every once in a while at Christmas, she'd say, when I was a teenager, we were in lockdown because there was a murderer on the loose on Christmas Eve. And we had to turn on all the lights and everything, and we didn't know what was happening. We stayed listening to the radio to find out what was going on with this guy. So after she died, I looked into it. I looked into the story. And it's a fantastic story. Incredible. I don't know that I could really tell it to you now. They just tore down one of the houses where this happened. This guy was really pissed off at his landlord. It was Christmas Eve. He's moving out. The landlord's son comes over and starts some mess with him. And the guy, the tenant says, I'm going to grab my gun. I'm going to kill your parents. So being the dutiful good son that he was, he ran off to a gas station somewhere. The guy, sure enough, grabs his shotgun, goes over there, blows his father away. His mom is running for the front door to try to get away. This happened at the back of the house. He was just sitting there reading the newspaper, and he just, his shotgun killed him. She's running towards the front door, glass door. He meets her at the door and shoots her through the glass door. And then he walks up to this house, knocks on the door. This old man answers. He goes, I want you to give me a ride to the police station. I want to turn myself in and just kill two people. The woman survived. And the guy's like, well, I don't drive. My daughter drives. So, well, get your daughter. The daughter comes out. They can't find the keys. She says, oh, I can't find the keys. Well, let's go to this house, not next door, but the next house, okay? And they go to there, and the woman answers the door. She's got a baby. And he's got the shotgun and everything. He says, I need a ride to the police station. The father comes out. He's upset. He goes, what is this? They start struggling for the gun. He gets killed. The baby almost gets killed. The bullet grazes the baby. They go running into the house, and he starts walking downtown. The chief of police lived across the street. He comes over to see what's going on, and he goes, oh, my God. And he said he also killed two people. So they put out a manhunt for this guy, and they told all people to turn on all your lights because we don't know. He started walking towards downtown. Nobody knew where he was. The communication system at the police station was overloaded and just shut down. So the only way that cops could talk to each other is to go to a call box and call in and find out what's going on. So the guy walks into the fire station downtown, where the Sheridan is or whatever it's called now. And he had been volunteering for them. And he walks in and they realize that he's the murderer. And they somehow ambushed him and shot him in the head, and he went to the hospital and confessed. And after his confession, he passed away. But
I've never heard that story before.
It's not a story that's been told.
That's what year was that?
1947.
47.
Yeah, it was the first year where the rationing from the war had ended. It was the first year where you could make cakes and pies. It was like life had returned to normal in the United States after the war, after all the shortages and everything. You could buy a new car now. You could buy tires. You could buy hosiery and that type of thing, which you couldn't get, all through the 40s because of the war shortages. And then to have that happen. So I wish that I'd gotten the story when my mom was alive.
Jeez. Well, I'm sure, back to my grandfather, growing up here in that time, I I'd never heard that story too, but if he was still here, I'd be like, hey, tell me about that 1947
I'm trying to get,
crazy.
I wrote that story for O. Henry and the editor at the time. He said, it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make not to publish that story because it's just too gritty, I guess. But I'm going to try to talk the new editor, Cassie, into printing it. We always joke about it. We're going to have the murder Christmas issue of O. Henry. Completely inappropriate. But
all right, Billy, you mentioned writing some of these stories for the O. Henry. Now, are you currently writing for the O. Henry still?
I have a monthly column called Wandering Billy, and then I write features.
How long have you been doing that?
10 years.
10 years?
10 years now. And it was another one of those Hail Mary plays. 10 years ago, Google put me out of business. Took TV Party so far off the search engine, you could search for tvparty.com and it wouldn't come up.
Jeez.
So my income went down to about $300 a month. I was making a good living and then went down to overnight, $300 a month. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I started selling everything. And I thought, well, I guess, I worked at Hardee's when I was a teenager. Maybe I could get a job and be assistant manager at Hardee's. I've got to do something. And then I thought, no, wait a minute, Billy. You're such a great writer, and all these reviewers are telling you that you're the greatest. And the TV Party book got the kind of reviews that, as a writer, you would dream about, but you wouldn't ever expect. You just wouldn't, from all over the world. And so I thought, well, if I'm that good, let's write your way out of it. So I wrote a story about the murder of Ed LeBrun of Babylon. That's a trippy story. And I researched it to the point where I'm writing to one of the murderers. He didn't do the murder, but anyway, I'd been right. So I had correspondence back and forth 6 months before I published anything.
Wow.
Wrote that, submitted it to Yes Weekly. They said yes. So I went on staff for Yes Weekly. And I wrote the story of radio personality Bob Poole that I knew growing up. He was on the air for 25 years on WBIG from 50s and into the 70s. Wrote that story, which everybody of my age would remember, And I submitted that to O. Henry, and they got in touch with me, and they were like, where have you been? So I started writing, I wrote a couple of features for them, and they asked me if I would write a monthly column. The way the editor described it to me was, we would like call it Wandering Billy, because you walk around a lot. You're, like you would see people on the porch talking, you would go up to them on the porch and join in their conversation. And I thought, that's the most appalling idea I've ever heard in my life. The very definition of minding your own business. You're sitting on the porch talking, some Goomba comes up and wants to join in your conversation. Yeah. But I took that to mean just write about anything you want to write about. And so every month I get to write about, whatever I want to write about. And it's loads of fun. And I've met a lot of great people. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Because I've always dreamed of writing a column for a quality magazine.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that would ever happen because there are no magazines anymore. When I was growing up in the 70s, the newsstand was your internet. You had magazines of every conceivable stripe. Any subject you could think of, there were magazines on it. And so that was tremendously exciting to me. But, by the time the 2000s had come, the magazines had gone out of business. They're just, and the few that are left are pretty closed off.
I feel like O. Henry's still does pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I tell people I'm a writer for O. Henry. Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, you may as well tell them I'm a movie star or something. It's great. It's fantastic. Because you're talking about New York Times best-selling authors. For the founding editor, Jim Dodson, New York Times best-selling author multiple times. Ross Howell, best-selling author. I just go on and on and on. They're so talented, so incredibly talented.
That's got to be pretty cool to be in the room with them.
It is.
For sure.
It is. It really is.
Any particular pieces over the 10 years you've been writing for them that really stick out emotionally or just proud of, or like, man, that was just an incredible experience to be able to research and write that?
Well, I won an award last year from the North Carolina Press Association. They give out 3 awards for best feature article. I thought it would be like best feature article, humor, or best, but no, it's just best feature article. I got 3rd place, and another O. Henry writer got 1st place. And so that was the story of a guy bringing denim manufacturing back to Cone Mills, in a small way, but still, he's making denim at the old Cone Mills White Oak plant. And so that's what won that award. But I remember traipsing around in the woods around there and finding the old swimming pool, the community swimming pool and stuff, because the Cone used to, when you went to work for Cone, they gave you a place to live. You shopped in the stores, their stores. They had their own grocery stores, their own drug stores, their own fashion stores, their own doctors, their own police, everything. It was a totally contained. I would look at it as being trapped myself, but that was a way of life.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand that history of Greensboro that live here. And speaking of Page, go to some of the neighborhoods around Page, and you see some of the neighborhoods are still divisions of Cone. If you look at the tax records, and that's what they were over there by Revolution Mills. Now those homes, were manufacturing homes, and that's where a lot of the people that worked at Cone Mills lived, and that's where that kind of came from. And I think that's an incredible part of history for Greensboro that. I'm glad to see some life coming back to Revolution Mills with
isn't it great?
The Cow and the restaurants over there and the great pizza place over there. I butcher the name every time. Thank you, Thomas Corgina for it. Yeah, and there's some law offices and just seeing that. And I've watched the home values there too. When I got into the business, it was like, oh, you can go get a house over there in Cone Mills for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. 10, 11 years ago, and to see investors and personal owners both come in there and start investing money in those homes, and now seeing those homes values go up to 170, 200, which is still affordable.
Yeah, it is.
And they're smaller homes, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I love to see that part of Greensboro. And anyway, that's, as a textile based family and whatnot, You might appreciate the story. You got me thinking about, we're kind of rewinding here, those four corners there where the Hamburg Square, right? We went to the beach one time down in Wrightsville Beach. I was with my family and whatnot, and we'll tie this back into a couple of stories. I had to go use the bathroom, so we're doing the number 2, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the wall like you do, and there's a picture on the wall. I'm like, man, that looks familiar. And it was the side of the building of Natty Green's in downtown Greensboro, this nice painting. And I'm like, something else looks familiar. And on the side of the brick was like a half blue, Dixie Bell's colors were blue. And I can see the Dixie Bell label on the side of this building. And I'm like all excited. I'm like, all right, I got to wrap this up. And I like run in the kitchen. I'm like, Granddad, Dad, like crazy painting, Greensboro, Dixie Bell. And they're like, oh yeah, we used to have offices on the top floor of Natty Green's. And that it was that. And I don't know the years. And needless to say, they didn't really know that painting existed, and they researched it, and they ended up, I now have a copy of that painting, and it was just so cool to see that history and the textile and what. Anyway, that's a side note. Back to the O. Henry. It seems like you've kind of found your passion there with them and writing. It really seems like that's something that you enjoy, and I think that's so cool to see. Something so local, and when we talk about the internet and we talk about how Google and all these companies and just how it is, most people are not going to printed press to get their information. So to have a local magazine like that, and to have somebody here with me that writes for that was seen in high enough regard to get a press award in North Carolina, and then to hear that somebody else at the same publication here locally was in that top 3 as well. Like, I just think that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome.
Well, and that's all, Jim Dodson starting it. I guess they'd done the magazine in Pinehurst, because that's the magazine is published out of Southern Pines. The newspaper there, the Pilot, owns it. And I guess they had a successful magazine there, and they asked, well, what other city do you think we should do? And he said Greensboro, and they were like, Greensboro? You really think there's enough stories about Greensboro? And he said, I do. I think there are stories about Greensboro. And when I started my monthly column, I thought, oh, well, maybe 6 months, and I'm going to run out of ideas. What am I going to write about? It's Greensboro. But then as I start digging in, I'm finding things all the time, people and places and things all the time that I'm fascinated with, and I hope that, that my passion for it shows and people enjoy it. I know they do, because they tell me they do. It's great. I've gone, from being international now to being local. So I can't, my pool is shrinking and I don't know how much further I can shrink down. I'm going to be writing about a neighborhood,
That's all right, though.
When I was a little kid, I had a neighborhood newsletter that I sold for 5 cents that I wrote and typed up, right, with carbon paper and everything. I'll probably be going back to that.
The old school typewriter.
Yeah. Yep.
So you mentioned kind of having this just worldwide impact with some of the things you've done and lived from LA to London, now back in Greensboro. Is there any component that in our conversation today that we've missed in those journeys that you're just incredibly proud of, or just even just a funny story that you'd like to share?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just bang around, my little corner of the world. I'm just happy to have a roof over my head and friends, good friends, and stuff to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
I hear you. We visited London right after, me and my wife. Man, she's gonna love this. I've plugged her in like 5 times today. She's gonna be like, man, you really overdid it today. What do you want? We went to London after we got engaged in Central Park. And we did the whole Paris-London thing. Went a couple of days in Paris and London. And I got to say, we stayed in Soho. And I love telling this story. There was this jazz club, right? My wife's a big jazz, Amy Winehouse, one of her favorite things. It was like, the jazz club was famous because Amy Winehouse used to perform there. We got to go there, right? Man, and we go, and there's like a $10 cover. It's like 6 o'clock at night. I'm like, what is this $10 cover? And we walk in. There's one like lonely jazz performer in this back room, looked like something out of a rundown strip club. And there's like 2 people back there listening. And we sit down in the front and we're like, order our drinks and everything. We're like, where are we at? And the owner is still just, there's Amy Winehouse everywhere. And you can tell he's still trying to live 20 years ago, where like he probably had a really cool club then. And we were like, all right, let's just get an appetizer and have our drinks and we'll move on. And, we started reading the menu and it's like king prawn and all this stuff. And like, oh, let's get that, dude. It was straight up frozen box food from Costco. And it was like, what are we doing? The music was great. I will say it was great, but London was a cool experience for us. We just got out and walked around.
It is. It's great.
I've got to say that if comparing London and Paris, I think I would go back to London 10 times over.
My first day, when I moved to London, my first day was 9/11. So my business partner calls me and goes, Billy, wake up. Got on, I was tired. I was sleeping in the afternoon. This is the afternoon. And he goes, terrorists have attacked New York and they took down the Twin Towers. I go, Jim, come, the internet. You just read some crazy thing on the internet. Not to believe everything you read. No. We're watching it on the TV now. We didn't have a TV. So I didn't get to see it. It was, I think, 6-7 years before I ever saw that footage of the planes going into the towers. Never saw it. Because I tried to get it on the internet, with the postage stamps. I got 3 frames on abcnews.com. And the guys from the BBC saw what I wrote about trying to access the internet to watch the 9/11 thing. He said, you should have gone with us. We had better bandwidth. So they invited me to come to the BBC and take a tour of their operations, the BBC News and everything. That was really cool.
Nice. Well, Billy, I appreciate you coming on here, and this was the first time I got to meet you, and that's what I think is so great about doing things like this in a city we live in Greensboro, is the opportunity to just sit down and meet somebody that has got such cool stories. And I'm sure we just tapped the surface of what you've done in your life. Let's end here. Title movie for Billy Ingram's life. What would the title of that movie be, and what would the plot be?
Well, there's no plot. That's
Wandering
for sure.
Billy?
Yeah, Wandering Billy. Yeah. There's no plot. Nowhere Man, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't. Lucky. I mean, honestly, I really feel I've been incredibly lucky. In a lot of ways, I've not been lucky, but I think, being at the right place at the right time in so many instances. Zelig might be a good title. I just feel really grateful that I've lived the life that I've lived. And I can't, first of all, I didn't think I'd ever get to be my age. This is ridiculous. I thought I was going to be dead at 30. So, you know, I didn't have a contingency for 50, much less 60, and much less now coming up on 70. It's just like, no, how much more do I have to take? Well, come on, please call me home. I'm done. I've done all I can do.
Yeah. Well, hey man, I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very
much. Look forward to staying in touch, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And yeah, man, just gracious. Thank you.
Cheers.
Sweet.